Welcome back to the farm, everyone. Today's question is tenders or nuggets? And can the vertical till make either of those? I think the answer is yes, and that's why the chickens are over here and not in the field. Katie's in the 9460R pulling the 2660 VT variable rate tillage. I just say vertical till. It's a glorified disc, aggressive gang angle, good leveling system on the back. Should give us the option to no-till in the spring or work it either way. The goal is not to decompact, it's really just to incorporate corn stalk residue. We've got it set at 6 inches right now, which is the max it'll go. I thought with the dryness that it would struggle to do a good job, yet as I look out here, this is a beautiful finish. We're getting that trash that's full of nutrients and organic matter back into the top 5 to 6 inches of the soil, leaving something level enough that gives us a lot of flexibility in the spring. These newer vertical tills, which aren't actually vertical tills, like to be driven fast. Katie likes to operate fast, so it's a perfect combination. There's somewhat of a balance to be found between speed and effectiveness. Once you get over 10, maybe 11 miles an hour, sometimes the disc has a tendency to hop out of the ground, start bouncing a little bit. From our experimentation, and your mileage may vary, we found 10 to 11 miles an hour to be the sweet spot as long as you can pull it that fast. Something to do with the momentum of the blades as they chop through the soil and throw it backwards. Speed really helps, but too much speed hurts. To the naked eye, it really does not look like we're doing a whole lot to the residue or to the top of the soil. Even a seemingly minimal amount of chopping and integration goes a really long way as nature takes its course over the next 6 to 7 months. The moisture and the microbiome together work to break down these stalks, this leaf material. 250 bushel corn leaves a lot of organic matter on top, and there's actually a lot of value to be had in that. Unless we change our game plan, and that happens a lot, that rig right there will work about 2,000 acres of corn stalks this year. Really only take a good 7 to 8 days to get that all done, if not less. Everyone's farms and experiences are different. I'd love to know where you're located and what kind of tillage practices you're using on your corn stalks. Some people use cover crops, some people straight no-till. Other people turn it as black as possible, bring up as much soil. We are far enough south in Illinois that we get a pretty extensive growing season, so turning the soil over to make it a solar panel really does not benefit us that much in the spring. It might be a day or two advantage at the cost of burning a lot more fuel and making the ground really soft, which I thought this spring hurt us. I will now switch to the segment where I put on my hypocrite hat because we're going to be doing the opposite. Minimal tillage on top and a lot of disturbance underneath with the old inline ripper. Yep, some of you remember this tool. Ran it last year, had some trials with it. Some of you remember a few videos ago that I have yield data that shows it didn't benefit us at all. Old habits die hard, and this seems to be the best solution for deep tillage. I swear my dad is a different breed. It's like he doesn't take a moment off at all. I slept in a little bit. We went to church this morning. He got up and went to church at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. and he's been out here. He's unhooked the augers. He's cleaning off the drive over pit. The wheels just do not stop turning for him, and I respect that. He's hardworking and gritty. It's just hard to keep up with him at times. This 9620R had some hydraulic lines replaced on it last summer from a leak. And I don't think they put any extra oil on it because Dad and I checked it and it was low. It was below the minimum, so we had to put about 6 gallons of high guard in here, get her up into spec so we could run it. I don't even know what I'm accomplishing here, just flicking the buttons to see if they're working. Let's go see how many oil well pipes we can drag out of the ground. I know a lot of you can probably relate that momentum is a very real thing on the farm. It's hard to slow down once you have the inertia going. If you take a day off, it almost makes you sluggish when you come back. So staying in tune, keeping the schedule firm this time of year actually maximizes your productivity. I think I heard the Larsons say in one of their videos that they found that when they take a day off, that next day or 2 days later when they come back, it's like everything's out of whack and they probably should have just kept working. So there's pros and cons to everything. Sometimes you got that fire burning so hot and so fast that that wick doesn't have much left on it, and if you shut it off, it doesn't start back up easy. Katie. We won't see her for a while. This is where we'll be starting today, our wettest field. Wettest is in field that holds the most water when it rains. It's bone dry right now. I forgot how miserable this four-wheel drive tractor is to take down the road. Although the big tires give it a lot of traction, it makes it very cumbersome. I could see why guys would spend the extra money to get the tracks, because the tractor would probably be 4 foot narrower. I don't know how deep we have this set, probably 14 inches or so. We're gonna work a little bit, get out and measure and see. That looks pretty good right there. Look at it pull that ground up. We'll get out and check the depth, see if we need to adjust. It's pretty deep. Where are we? Maybe here? There's a lot of times where carrying a tape measure with you is just a labor of love. You ask yourself, why in the world do I have a miniature tape measure in my pocket every day that I never use? And then once in a blue moon, it comes in super handy. Looks like we're about 16 inches if I measured that right. That's almost too deep. The problem we're gonna run into is that this tractor is capable of pulling this fairly fast, and the issue is going to be, if you go too fast with this tool, it'll start to blow the ground out. This is somewhat minimal disturbance. If you go fast, it'll look like a crater out here. We learned that the hard way last year. Basically, you have to make a choice between maximizing hours and efficiency of your tractor or quality of work, because you can't have both. This is almost too much tractor for a 9-shank inline ripper. They actually have a kit to turn it into an 11-shank. We just didn't know we needed it, and we probably should do it, but we also don't know that we're gonna keep doing this. So we're just gonna get by for now. Just to remind those who have forgotten, Katie is trying to work the top couple inches of the corn stalks, chop up the residue, and incorporate it into the soil. I'm trying to work underneath that layer. We're getting 15 to 16 inches down to remove any hard pan from wet tillage in the spring, wet tillage in the fall. A lot of guys are trying to do this because on paper it makes perfect sense. You reach deep, you disturb that bottom layer, and hopefully improve water infiltration and root development of your crop next year. I don't know that it actually works that way, but it sounds really good if you think about it hard enough. It just also didn't show any advantage in yield for us this year, so I don't know that it actually helps at all, but we're gonna do it. This is right where we ran that steel bar through the X9 a few weeks ago. We're kind of guessing that we had some tile put in a few years ago, and the tile plow just curled it out of the ground and we never saw it. Believe it or not, when you farm across enough ground and you move quick enough and you work at night and there's all these different factors, you actually don't see everything out in the field. It's easier to see things now when there's crop residue because it provides a lot of contrast, like that Walmart bag right there stands out. When the ground is worked and powdered down in the spring, items that have an earth-type tone to them are a lot harder to see. That steel bar would not have stuck out the way you think it would have. I've been playing around with the settings a little bit the last few rounds. I've noticed that once I get over about 6.5 miles an hour, it doesn't seem to leave that smooth of a finish. I tried pulling it out of the ground a little bit. It also started to blow out the trenches. So I think you've almost got to keep this thing deep and you got to run it slower if you want to have a nice undisturbed topsoil. And there's spots out here that almost kill the tractor. It'll be plugging right along like a racehorse and it'll just hit a spot in the field. I don't know what's out there where it's like a brick wall it's trying to go through. Also, describing this finish as undisturbed is a very loose usage of the term. It's definitely disturbed on top, just much less than it could be. I'll feather it out of the ground here and show you what it looks like behind if you pull it out at all. Whereas if you put it in the ground and almost kill the tractor in the process, it looks a lot better. Well, we've got a problem. And a bad problem at that, because that one's probably toasted. I noticed on that last through that this side of the ripper was pulling down farther. I just didn't see that this was off the rim, so I may have caught it a little bit too late. Either way, that's done for. And it's a Sunday, and we don't have a spare, so we may also be done for on this project, unless we do have a spare, but I don't think we do. I don't see anything that specifically points to failure. other than maybe it was just low and we didn't look at it. The whole goal with a tool like this is to kind of heave and fracture the ground at the same time. There's a correct amount of moisture required, because if it's too wet, you won't achieve that fracturing. If it's too dry, it's really hard to pull, but you actually may get most of the fracturing you need. You can't really tell, but it's actually lifting the soil up a little bit while it's going through. So that should be decompacting the ground, if anything will. I'm not sold that it does, but we'll find out again next year. Look at some of the chunks that this pulls up. Just tight ground. Again, the dryness has a lot to do with that. It's crazy. It's also interesting to look at some of this black dirt and see how it appears to be wet still, even though there's not much moisture in it at all. Look at the size of those chunks in a real low-lying area of the field. Wow, boulders almost. I could already hear the field cultivator operators complaining about the rough ride. Don't blame me, just trying to solve compaction. 21, nope. Third time's a charm. Yep. The rim looks fine. I don't know about the tire. Might be able to save it with a tube. Actually, these wires may indicate differently.
Hello?
Do we have a spare tire for this inline ripper?
No? You break one?
Yeah, one's off the rim.
Well, how many bolt is it?
8 lug. I think it's a wagon tire.
Does the plow ones work?
It might. I've got it in the back of my truck. If you want me to bring it by, we can compare them.
Yeah, I know, do that.
Okay. For some reason, I swear that we negotiated for a spare tire on this when we bought it. A lot of times if we trade into a new piece of equipment, if it's something we didn't already have, we usually try to work a spare tire in the deal, because this happens a lot actually. Tires just go bad or didn't have enough air in them or something happened. This was a perfectly timed breakdown because I was scheduled to clock out and Dad was going to take over for a little bit, so he's got to fix the tire. We've got a trunk or treat to go to. Look at this. Little Woody and Big Buzz Lightyear. Can you say to infinity and beyond? Good afternoon for it. Perfectly timed breakdown. I'm good at those. After a long 4 to 5 weeks of almost continuous harvesting, it was actually really nice to take off early, go spend some time with the family and see them in their cute Halloween costumes. I'm not complaining by any means. I love this lifestyle. It's so fun working on the farm. It's very rewarding. However, after you harvest for a long time, you're just so burnt out that even doing tillage seems monotonous. It would actually make a lot of sense, other than costing you money, to have a part-time guy, an old retired guy, just out and about when he wants to in the evenings or on the weekends, doing some tillage for you while you're out harvesting, so you don't actually have to come do all the tillage after the fact. The counter argument I already mentioned is that you have to pay that person, whereas some people like myself, Katie, Jeff, Chris, we're already getting paid, so we're not really double dipping here. It's just our job to work. We did end up having a spare tire that fit this. Dad's actually already got the other one repaired at the tire shop in case we blow a second one. He ran it for about 2 hours, hour and a half, got another 30 or 40 acres worked. This is not a fast job, and it's definitely not a clean one either. He backed it out of the ground about an inch. He thought it was too deep. This ripper is really ridging the ground. It is heaving it up and shattering it, so it's accomplishing its goal. It's just gonna be really rough in the spring. Par for the course, I guess. This ground is really hard. I don't know that it's compacted, although I would assume it is after what it's been through the last 10 years. Wet falls, wet springs, tight soil. There's a lot of guys around the countryside running a similar tool to this season. They may not all be Blue Jets yet. I've noticed ours and the Blue Jets in general seem to be one of the worst about blowing the soil open like this. Other guys run them and you can hardly even tell, other than a little strip, that they've been ran. I don't know if they're going slower, if our shanks are wider. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just going to be a real eyesore and really rough this spring, unless we get a nice hard frost, or a few hard frosts this winter, and some moisture to break up these dark clods. This is really, really, really productive soil. I mean, that's as black as night right there. Just super wet. People say you need to evaluate where your hard pan is to use this effectively. I don't have a soil penetrometer. I do have this tool for checking the depth, and I can manually estimate where the compaction is. It's fairly rounded, so it doesn't have a lot of penetrating power. You have to put some elbow grease in this. That doesn't feel very compacted, actually. That went right in like butter. Why are we running the inline ripper again? Oh, there's a hard spot. Top couple inches and right in there like glass. I don't know, folks. Something drove here. Combine. Oh man. And then, oh, I think I hit a tile. Don't go that deep or you hit a tile. Probably plastic because there's no clay marks on here. It's like I'm prospecting for oil. There did used to be a lot of oil wells out here. And oil would also be much deeper. Yeah, it feels like that top 4 or 5 inches is horrid, probably from the field cultivators. But once you get below that, there's nothing really stopping you. So this tool may not be doing us any benefits. We'll find out. It was chilly last night, and this is quite a workout for the 9620, so I let it warm up for 6 or 7 minutes. We're ready to get this started. I went back and started where it's already been ripped. You'll hear when it gets into the unripped area right about now. Yeah, tractor starts pulling harder. Even if I slow it down, this thing just does not want to stay in the ground. It hops around a lot. This is one of the heaviest inline rippers on the market too. That was kind of our leading factor when we decided on this versus a deer or a case. And it still bounces around. You can see one side will hop out, the other side will go in, and back and forth. We are getting good lifting and shattering between the rows. Just don't like how uneven it's doing it. In the time it's taken us to work this first 50 acres, the vertical tills worked almost 300. That's the difference in productivity you get between the two tools. They're also going after two completely different goals. I'm gonna leave a check strip on this field, maybe a couple rounds wide, and we'll be able to analyze this data and the data from the other field for the next few seasons to come and see if there's any obvious things that stand out as to whether or not this is helping us. I just can't help myself. I've started and I can't stop. I'm even in the cornfield. I'm just kidding. I want to do this in to see if it made a difference. More data. Oh man, it has been a long day of doing nothing productive, just going back and forth slowly. Regardless of whether or not this tool actually has any positive impact on your ground, you can definitely see what passes are causing compaction, especially in the top couple inches. I see a lot of sideways compaction where I sprayed the farm crossways. You see the angled areas where the combines ran. I don't know if that's actually compaction or if that's because the residues decomposed there or was broken down from the combines going across. There's a few spots out there where I could see where I turned the grain cart loaded, and that definitely packs the top of the ground even with the tracks. There's a lot of different things on the farm that put a lot of stress on the top couple inches. Moisture levels matter as well. We also ran the disc grip route here last fall. I think that actually hurts you because it loosens it back up and makes it more prone to recompacting. I don't think this inline ripper, even if it is economical to run, is something that you would use every year, more like every 4 or 5 years, or never again if you don't do any kind of wet tillage or harvesting. It's the wet passes when you compact the field that cause long-term issues, and that's what we're thinking on paper this should alleviate. Like I said numerous times, I'm just not sure that the data actually indicates that's even possible. The really complicated part of the question, when you see these big chunks get pulled out of the top 6 to 10 inches of the ground, is whether or not a frost or a hard freeze in the winter and some moisture would be enough to fix that in the first place. Because you could make a fair argument that Mother Nature would heal some of this tight soil on its own, and a lot of the tightness is probably actually because of how dry it is. Some of these really dark soils, when the moisture is out of them, they shrink up very compact, makes them seem harder and tighter than they are, when in reality they just need hydration to allow the soil particles to fluff back up, and by next year you would never even have known that you might have worked it a little wet or had some sins out here. That's where these things get really complicated. That's why I'm mapping the passes on the tractor in the operations center, so in the next 2 or 3 years I can keep coming back and analyzing these passes to see if we made any kind of an impact. There's that vertical till, probably knocking on 1,000 acres done, and I'm getting close to 200 maybe in a 4-day span. Yeah, not quite as productive. The only downside to these inline rippers, if you set them deep enough, you will find the old oil well pipes that are left out here, or big rocks, but I think this is an oil well pipe because I already sheared one bolt a couple rounds ago. We fixed it, and now I got two over there when I put it down. If you watch them just kick around the dirt, sheared them off. Not filmed a whole lot today. It's just been so violently windy outside, it makes doing any kind of content almost impossible without it sounding horrid. I have heard of a few instances today of small fires turning into big fires, low humidity, dry ground conditions, and of course the wind together. It's a nasty combination. Doesn't even look like it's sheared. Clean off. It hardly even phased the tractor. I just heard a little plunk, and I looked back and these two were out of the ground. All those darned oil wells that used to be out here. There were a ton on this farm in particular. This whole area had a lot of oil wells. There's not very many left. There's just old pipe in the ground. It's got to be what we're hitting. Or they buried some junk. There's the carnage, in case you're curious. Not all of the bits and pieces made it back. Some of them are out in the field somewhere. Contribute some iron back to Mother Earth. I'm gonna go ahead and just bring the tools with me because there's probably a 40 to 50% chance I shear another one. I seem to be getting close to the source of where the pipe's coming from. It's amazing the stuff they left and then other things they took with them. This countryside was littered with the old oil wells. It was probably very fun for the oil people at the time, unless they went bankrupt, because some of them did go bankrupt. Happens to the best of us. Imagine watching paint dry, then think of something more boring than that, and that is what running the inline ripper is like. Plus a little bit more violence because it's rough. There's my check strip out there. Get some yield data over the next few years on that farm. Hold up a few chunks in that field because there's definitely some surface compaction, and the dryness just makes that ground tight. Hopefully this helps. Actually, maybe I'd rather it not help, then we don't have to do it. I'm not sure this tillage even pays. Makes you feel good, seems like it should help, but I just don't know that that's actually the case. I'm excited to get this thing out and see what it can do. The only bad thing is that it's gonna be warm, so don't really need it just yet, but we'll give it a test. It's cheaper than a heated shop, that's for sure. There goes Katie. And it's still extremely windy if you can't tell. No burn warnings out, you name it. Big fires around the countryside. It's dry. That vertical till's probably knocking on 1,500 acres in 4 days, I bet. There goes all of our organic matter. Go into the next field. You can just flat out cover acres when you got a good, reliable tractor and tool and someone to operate it. Katie and Jeff have kind of been splitting the responsibility. Katie runs from 7 to 8 in the morning to maybe 5 or 6 in the evening, and then Jeff comes in and runs it till I don't even know when. I think the other night he ran till like midnight. So we're getting a lot done with that machine, maximizing productivity. That's what we like. In a perfect world, I'd love to not even have to work the corn stalks, but I just don't know what you do with all of that material. It will slow you down in the spring. I personally don't think that no-tilling is the correct choice for corn stalks. Maybe I'm wrong. The one thing you don't notice, even though there's a lot of soil you can see kind of blowing away in the dust, is that if you don't work it, all those corn stalks will start to blow away. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. I don't know that tillage is necessary, which is hypocritical to me to say after the deep tillage we've done in the preliminary part of this video. Don't know the perfect answer. We're still trying to figure that out. If you guys know the perfect solution, let me know in the comments. First thing this morning, we had 3/10 of an inch of rainfall, and man, oh man, what a positive difference that makes on our tillage efforts. Rain just really lubricates the top of the soil. You can see how much more moisture's in this, getting a little bit better cut with the vertical till, and overall the quality is slightly better. Of course, what's already been worked will also get the rain on it, and that helps break it down, get the microbials moving. I've seen farms like this work up worse in the spring than it is right now in the fall. If it wasn't about to be winter, you'd have the planter out here putting some soybeans in the ground. I guess if we wanted to plant wheat, this would be a good wheat seed bed. By next spring, this will look good. Leave us the option to no-till beans into it or run the field cultivator. Just depends on how the spring unfolds. I didn't come to the field just to spectate. No, Jeff was having some auto steer issues. I seem to be the mastermind on those systems. So I ran up here, checked a few buttons, changed a few settings, got it working again. Nothing wrong, just something was changing the monitor on its own doing, and sometimes if you're not familiar with the software and the systems, it's very complicated to figure out over the phone. I ran up here just to help. Jeff had already actually hand steered half the field. He can do that. He's old school, it's not his first time steering a tractor. Clearing the blockade around the lime pile because we're having some of that lime spread tomorrow. Get the draper and the sprayer out of the way. I also need to put the floaters on this thing and think about spraying a few fields this fall. Just haven't quite gotten there yet. Still recharging from harvest. Other than the rain, there have been a few obvious noteworthy things that have happened today. I got a haircut after like 3 months. I took a nap a little bit ago. It's been a pretty productive day. Everyone's just kind of worn out, trying to get things done. We've only got 300-400 acres of corn stalks to work. We'll have all but maybe 300 done by the end of today. We're sitting in a really good place right now, management-wise. We're caught up. We're getting things done as they come across the table. Dad and I have been working on some managerial stuff together, just doing what we can to tie up loose ends before winter sets in. Just to stop myself from rambling, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the plug on this video, although there's always adventures that await on the horizon on the farm. Some are good, some are bad. You just have to watch the next video to find out. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope you have a great day. See you in the next one. Peace!